Vessel calcification risk study using VMT models of 4 key inputs: PP, MAP, FPG, and VF. Number 1421, VMT Sharp 744, November 5, 2025. Gerald C. EclaireMD Foundation. Category: Vascular calcification, CVD, and stroke. Preface: as a 79-year-old male who has lived with type 2 diabetes since 1990, and experienced 5 cardiac events between 1994 and 2004, I have now fully stabilized both my metabolic and cardiovascular conditions since 2014. However, what about the damages that had already occurred before 2010? On June 21, 2025, I suffered a hemorrhagic stroke near the pons area of my brain. A CT scan revealed extensive cerebral microvessel calcifications, with numerous bright white areas. My stroke doctors told me that these were caused by chronic hypertension. As a long-term diabetic patient, my average hemoglobin A1C remained above 10% from 1990 to 2009, despite taking multiple diabetes medications, but with no effort toward lifestyle management. Over the most recent 16 years, from 2010 to 2025, I completely changed my strategy by focusing entirely on lifestyle management without any medications. This approach successfully reduced my weight from 220 pounds, BMI 32.5, to 170 pounds, BMI 25.0, and brought my hemoglobin A1C from above 12% down to the range of 6.3%-7.0%. After the stroke on June 21, 2025, I applied the VMT energy model to analyze its underlying causes. The results showed that my earlier 20 years of poor metabolic control contributed approximately 91% of my stroke risk, while the more recent 16 years contributed only about 9%. During the past 36 years, I did not suffer from chronic hypertension. However, I did experience occasional acute hypertensive episodes, triggered by my business-related stress. This finding raised a fundamental question in my mind: between metabolic stress, from obesity, and diabetes, and hemodynamic stress, from vascular pressure and blood supply to organs, which one contributed more to my vascular calcification? In other words, which influential factor played the dominant role in the development of my cardiovascular disease and stroke? Introduction. Over the past 16 years, I have self-studied medicine and continuously refined my mathematical physical modeling approach to human health and disease through the GH method, viscoplastic medicine theory, VMT. This paper represents my latest study in the blood vessel calcification risk category, integrating 4 key input variables: pulse pressure, PP, mean arterial pressure, MAP, fasting plasma glucose, FPG, and visceral fat percentage, VF%. Together, these 4 biomarkers describe the combined metabolic, stress, and hemodynamic conditions that govern long-term vascular health. This paper, number 1421, is the second in my series of blood vessel calcification investigations, and provides the VMT model analysis results. My vessel calcification model consists of 2 primary foundations, as described in my previous paper number 1420, diabetes-driven calcification and hypertension-driven calcification, using the traditional pathophysiology approach. Data preparation. In this study, 2 blood pressure parameters are used as hemodynamic indicators. Pulse pressure, PP, is SBP minus DBP, reflecting arterial stiffness and elasticity. Mean arterial pressure, MAP, is DBP plus PP divided by 3, representing the average effective pressure that sustains oxygen and nutrient delivery to organs. Mathematical model, vascular calcification risk proxy, VCRP. The VCRP index distinguishes metabolic and mechanical influences on vascular stiffness and perfusion, the process of blood delivering oxygen and nutrients to tissues and organs. In this longitudinal analysis, fasting plasma glucose, FPG, and visceral fat percentage, VF%, represent chronic metabolic stress, while PP and MAP reflect hemodynamic load. To estimate calcification risk without relying on CT imaging, 4 measurable daily biomarkers are used. PP star is 45 mm of mercury, MAP star is 85 mm of mercury, FPG star is 90 mg per deciliter, VF star is 13%. Each parameter is normalized to its healthy reference value. NPP is PP divided by PP star, NMAP is MAP divided by MAP star, NFPG is FPG divided by FPG star, NVF is VF% divided by VF star. 2 intermediate components are then computed. Metabolic component is 0.26 times NPP plus 0.24 times NMAP. Hemodynamic component is 0.28 times NFPG plus 0.22 times NVF. The vascular calcification risk proxy, VCRP, is defined as VCRP is metabolic plus hemodynamic. This model allows long-term, quantitative tracking of vascular calcification Risk using daily biomarkers, thereby eliminating the need for repeated CT or imaging scans, which are both troublesome and expensive. Interpretation of VCRP: less than 40 is low risk, 40 to 79 is moderate risk, 80 to 119 is high risk, greater than or equal to 120 is very high risk. My calculated VCRP values were above 120 from 2010, 152 to 2012, 130, indicating a very high level of vascular calcification risk. After that initial period, the values gradually declined from 100 in 2013 to 99 in 2025, reflecting a steady improvement in overall vascular condition. Nevertheless, despite this long-term recovery, the cumulative vascular calcification and structural damage accumulated during the earlier years likely contributed to my stroke event on June 21, 2025. VMT energy analysis. The VMT model quantifies cardiovascular risk by examining the relationship between a single strain output and multiple stressors inputs. In this analysis, the strain variable, VCRP, represents systemic vascular calcification, while the four stressors correspond to independent but correlated contributors to total vessel calcification energy. The resulting strain stress spatial diagram displays four overlapping curves. As shown in the attached figure, the cumulative areas under each curve were calculated to determine the following VMT energy contribution ratios. VF% is 23%, FPG is 37%, metabolic inputs is 60%, PP is 17%, MAP is 23%, hemodynamic inputs is 40%. These results demonstrate a 6040 distribution between metabolic, diabetes and obesity, and hemodynamic, hypertension-related, influences on my vascular calcification. The cumulative VMT energy curve in the time domain rises rapidly from 0% in 2014 to about 92% in 2018, 99% in 2024, and 100% in 2025. This steady state saturation pattern of vascular calcification indicates that after 2018, my probability of experiencing a stroke, triggered by an acute hypertensive episode, had become inevitable due to long-term diabetic conditions. Discussion. The longitudinal data from 2010 to 2025 reveal a clear two-phase pattern in my vascular calcification dynamics. During the initial 3 years, from 2010 to 2012, the VCRP index remained above 120, reaching as high as 152, indicating an extremely high risk of vascular calcification. This early period corresponds to residual metabolic damage accumulated from the 20 years prior to 2010, when my diabetes was poorly controlled. At that time, both fasting plasma glucose, FPG, and visceral fat, VF%, values were significantly above their normalized reference levels, creating sustained metabolic stress on the vascular endothelium. After 2013, the data show a continuous downward trend in the VCRP index, from 115 in 2013 to 99 by 2025. This steady decline parallels my intensive lifestyle management program initiated in 2010, which progressively reduced both metabolic and hemodynamic stress. The corresponding VMT energy curve also demonstrates a classic viscoplastic recovery pattern: rapid energy accumulation during early years of correction, from 2014 to 2018, followed by stabilization, from 2019 to 2025. The energy curve plateauing near 99% after 2018 suggests that the calcification process had reached a near saturated state, where existing vascular damage could no longer be reversed, even though further deterioration was prevented. Among the four input biomarkers, FPG contributed the highest share of VMT energy, 37%, followed by VF%, 23%, MAP, 23%, and PP, 17%. The dominance of 37% from FPG confirms the strong influence of metabolic stress, particularly hyperglycemia, and insulin resistance, on endothelial dysfunction and medial calcification. Elevated VF% reflects long-term metabolic overload and chronic inflammation, which accelerate calcium deposition in the arterial wall. Meanwhile, MAP and PP represent mechanical stress on the vascular structure. Their combined 40% contribution reflects the secondary, but still significant role of blood pressure in the calcification process. These energy relationships support the concept that vascular calcification is not simply a hemodynamic disorder, but a metabolic structural transformation process driven mainly by chronic hyperglycemia, insulin resistance, and adiposity. The relatively lower but persistent contribution of PP and MAP indicates that mechanical loading acts more as an amplifier of pre-existing metabolic injury than as an independent initiator of vascular hardening. Conclusion. This 16-year longitudinal VMT analysis confirms that both metabolic and hemodynamic stress play essential, but asymmetrical roles in vascular calcification. The quantified energy ratios, approximately 60% metabolic versus 40% hemodynamic, demonstrate that long-term diabetes and visceral adiposity remain the dominant drivers of vascular stiffness, while hypertension serves as a secondary contributor that accelerates the final event, such as the trigger of my recent stroke. The VCRP mathematical model successfully tracks my vascular calcification risk, using simple daily biomarkers, eliminating the need for invasive or expensive imaging studies. Its gradual decline from 152 in 2010 to 99 in 2025 reflects my real physiological recovery through lifestyle management, even though the structural damages accumulated earlier remained largely irreversible. The combination of VCRP and VMT analyses provides a comprehensive and quantitative framework to evaluate vascular health over time. The findings also suggest that early metabolic control is far more decisive than late correction. Once extensive vascular calcification has developed, even perfect hemodynamic management can only stabilize, but not reverse the process. This conclusion explains why, despite my stabilized metabolic profile after 2014, the cumulative calcification burden from earlier decades still led to my hemorrhagic stroke in 2025. Disclaimer: I write this paper not for fame, but to share what I have learned so others can understand their health, prevent disease, and live longer, healthier lives. This content is for educational reference only, and does not constitute medical advice. No doctor-patient relationship is created. You may share this summary freely, but it must not be altered, edited, or republished as your own. All intellectual property rights and copyrights belong to the author. Gerald C.